Good afternoon, everybody. We're live. It is Thursday. Hope you're having a great day. Go to PastorScottShow.com to connect with us online, PastorScottShow.com. You can follow us on social media, and you can call the show if you want to join the conversation, 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. We talk about issues of the day from a Christian perspective. Go to clip 1.
What is your message to the parents in California after that ruling?
Congratulations, parents. It's the affirmation, I think, of parental rights, that they are the ones who are in charge of their children. These children are not wards of the state. The governor of California does not have the ability to, I think, overrule what parents would like to have for their children, and parents should have the rights to their children's records and what's going on with them. I think it's a slam dunk ruling. I'm surprised it wasn't 9-0 from the Supreme Court.
That was Secretary of Education Linda McMahon talking about a Supreme Court ruling recently that has blocked many of Gavin Newsom's California rules about making sure that the state gets to take care of your kids.
I take offense at our policies and strategies.
So did the Supreme Court. Only 6-3, which I think it is a little troubling that that's the case, because I do agree it should have been 9-0. But this is a really big deal and a big victory for parents here in California, and it will reverberate around the country. With me to talk about it more is Jennifer Kennedy. Jennifer Kennedy is a freedom attorney, and she has been very busy, not with us for a long time, but it's great to see you.
Great to be back. Always good to be back, and so much to talk about. That decision that we just heard Linda McMahon talking about, that's the Mirabelli case, and it is nothing short of historic. It's historic in the way that suddenly, unfortunately, we actually have to have our Supreme Court litigating, number one, parents' rights over their own children. But number two, really, whether a school can secretly, socially transition a child into the opposite sex, whether there's a right there or not. Hard to believe we're there, but we were, and the Supreme Court came out swinging, in my opinion, saying that absolutely parents' rights are paramount.
You know, it's one of those things where we shouldn't have to say it, but we do, right? Remember, I mean, it was even part of the State of the Union show. Remember?
Yes, it was.
When we had that, and even Trump says, I can't believe we even have to talk about this. And then he looked over and he said,
yes.
These people are crazy.
You know, let's talk about this case, because since it is going that far, and I am a little concerned that it was 6-3. Because it should have been 9-0. You know, there's actually a lot of 9-0 decisions. People, and you're having some experience with the Supreme Court, which is very cool in your legal profession. But the Supremes actually are not quite as biased as people say on a lot of stuff. But when it comes to this, they sure are. When
it comes to this, it is a religion sometimes for the people who are on the side of the cult of transgenderism, as I call it. So it's important to understand the Supreme Court's ruling. It's important to understand, what did they just rule on? And here's the deal. In Mirabelli v. Olson, which is how this case began, it's a federal court case down in the Southern District, and two teachers opposed their school district's policy that they were going to have to lie to parents about a trans-identifying child on campus, or they're going to have to lie to children about biology. Right. And tell kids that, yes, you can be the opposite sex, which, of course, was anathema, absolutely, against their religious faith. And they sued because this is violating their faith. And in a massive victory, here's what was so amazing. After months and months, years really, of litigation, the federal court ruled that, yes, the state of California has been secretly transitioning children behind parents' backs. They've been doing that by having the Cal Department of Ed basically tell schools that there's a law, that if there's a transgender identifying child on campus, you can't tell that parent unless the child agrees. That was the big lie.
And there is no law.
There is no law.
That whole thing's not true.
That's correct. That was the big lie that started more than a decade ago with the passage of an assembly bill called AB 1266. And I call that the Sports and Bathrooms Bill. What it did was it just added one little sentence to a section in the education code that said the school cannot prevent a child from being in the bathrooms, using the bathrooms of, or joining the sports team of the gender that corresponds with the child's gender identity rather than his or her sex. They can be, period. That a school, and that is how the state of California, the legislature, put boys in girls' locker rooms.
You know, every time this comes up, it is just, it's hard to even talk about because it makes no sense. And I realize that, you know, kids are always going through things, right? But 5 minutes ago, this made sense to nobody, right? This was, but it has been an agenda for a long time. So I think for most of us, some people don't even want to acknowledge this as a thing, or it's happening in that school, or maybe it's just happening in California because we're crazy. But it's actually happening all over the place, and it's been an agenda for a long time.
It has. It certainly has been creeping in the state of California since 2013 and before, but certainly in law since 2013, and obviously infecting the rest of the nation. We see these stories on the TV news about all these other school districts where parents are angrily talking to the school board, where boys are in girls' sports, etc. So here's jump ahead. After that AB 1266 was put into place, the California Department of Education basically told schools, this is a law, you have to keep this secret from parents. And schools swallowed that. They bought it, hook, line, and sinker. They began to create policies of parent deception, parent exclusion. They began to school boards would enact these administrative regulations designed to exclude parents only on the topic of a child identifying as transgender on the campus. It was insanity because think about it. Is there any other arena, any other area where a minor child can ask school adults to lie to his parents for him?
Right. There's nothing.
Nothing.
Right?
Nothing.
You know, the pushback would normally be abuse, right? Well, maybe the school thinks this kid has abusive parents. They might be right sometimes, right? They are right probably sometimes. So I can imagine you're, as teachers and admin, trying to protect the kid because of particular circumstances you know about.
However, you have to know in California, we have those mandated reporter laws. And teachers and counselors are well aware of what is required. You can't just guess. It cannot be prospective. It can't be a might be, maybe. It has to be, someone has to have evidence of abuse going on before they can report to authorities that they think this child is being abused. Unfortunately, the policy of the state of California, before the Mirabelli ruling, is that all parents are default monsters, default abusers, murderers of their kid, right? That is so wrong, and that is what the federal judge, got correct, which is saying parents are the biggest protectors and defenders of their children. They are the people who have the paramount right to direct their care and upbringing, and that is why he ruled for the plaintiffs in this case an injunction against the state of California. You have to stop these policies.
You're listening to the Pastor Scott Show. My guest is Jennifer Kennedy. We're talking about parental rights in California and where that stands right now. You can join the conversation if you've got a question for Jennifer. Anything you want to clarify, things you want to know, make a comment. Phone number is 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. This is the Pastor Scott Show. So when we're talking about parental rights, I'm a parent, and I say this all the time. When I go to a teacher's conference, I meet the teachers. To be honest with you, I don't care as much about the grades as I care about their well-being. How are they behaving in class? Are they polite? You know, what are they doing at recess, right? Or break. Now, my junior hire informed me he no longer has recess. I know that. I called it recess. He goes, we don't have recess, Dad.
I know, right. Get with it, Dad.
Okay, well, yesterday you had recess, but today, okay, you had break. Mm-hmm. But, I want to know. That's what I want to know. And the idea that a teacher would lie to me, or that teacher would be ordered to lie to me, or that the teacher would be risking their job by not lying to me, which is the case, that to me is just outrageous. Everybody, the pitchforks should come out.
They should.
For that.
And we saw pitchforks come out in the past couple of years where we've been arguing for parent notification policies, school boards to affirmatively say, you need to tell parents if their child is behaving this way, because the transgender identification is a maladaptive coping mechanism for something else going on with the child. The parents need to know. And what they were doing in school conferences like yours is that a parent would come in, and during the school conference, the parent would the teacher would talk to the parent about the child using the correct pronouns, the
Right.
correct name, except all day long, every day at school, they would be affirming that child as the opposite sex with a different name. That's ending as of now.
And the thing that's wild about that, right, is there's many things, but the conversation usually is if you're going to your doctor and your kids are wanting to transition or whatever, and then they say, well, do you want a dead daughter or a live son, right? And that your kid's going to commit suicide and this and that, they're suicidal. So, but when you take that into the schools, the teacher is hiding, therefore, the fact that your kid is probably suicidal. Does that make sense? Like the argument for doing it is, hey, which is not true, by the way, the whole suicidal thing. But the thing is that if my kid is that depressed and is going through these things, I need to know about that as a parent.
That's exactly right. And Rob Bonta himself is responsible for putting out the stats early on in the Chino Valley case that 86% of trans-identifying kids have had suicidal ideation. They think about it, and 56% have tried suicide. So I've been saying to school boards for a long time now, so you're telling me if my kid joins the suicide club at school, you're not going to tell me? That is 100% backwards.
Yes.
But that is what the state has been fighting to keep in place.
And it comes from the idea that all parents are bad, that's the default. And I want to come back to that because I think that's also a wild thing, that we have come to that place. And I realize there's a lot of parenting problems today, and teachers all have stories about parents who actually don't care, and they take the side of their troublemaking kid over the teacher, which never would have happened in my day. I get that. Yeah. But from a legal perspective, to do that, you're jeopardizing children for really an entirely separate, in my opinion, political agenda.
Absolutely. And it's crazy that we have had to remind everyone that the Supreme Court and 100 years of jurisprudence have held parents up as the protectors of their children, as the only people who have their best interests. And in fact, in the case, one of the strongest quotes that we heard coming out of the case, out of the Supreme Court, was that California's policies of parent exclusion cut out the primary protectors of children's best interests, their own parents.
Yeah.
And that's what the decision was. The great landmark decision was for California to stop those policies, stop enabling those policies throughout its school districts. And that's what the state of California appealed. They took it to the Ninth Circuit and they said, we're appealing this because we think this decision is wrong. And while our appeal is going on, Ninth Circuit, could you put a stay on it? Right. Could you block that landmark ruling so that we can keep lying to parents while we're making our way? And the Ninth Circuit, for whatever reason, agreed.
Well, the good news is that the Supremes did not.
That's right.
This is the Pastor Scott Show. My guest is Jennifer Kennedy. She's an attorney, a freedom attorney, as she calls, and she's working very hard on behalf of many people in many different areas where the government is overstepping their constitutional bounds, including when it comes to parenting. Phone number is 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557 on the Pastor Scott Show. Would you like to take a call?
Absolutely, anytime.
All right. Bridget and Whittier, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hi, go ahead, Bridget.
Okay, my friend let me know that you were talking about Gavin Newsom, but I missed that. But it doesn't matter because I follow Jennifer Kennedy on Facebook. So thank you, Jennifer, for all the work you do. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And I'm a grandma, mama bear who goes to the school boards in Whittier, California, always fighting. And everything I speak up about, nothing gets done. They just pass me by. I have a cousin who sits on the board, and it's been hard to get parents on board, to come speak up. So I've been consistent the past 5-6 years, and it's been really a challenge. And then they just put up an LGBTQ center here in Whittier about a year and a half ago under Janice Hahn. So,
wow. Well, thank you for fighting, because that's exactly what we've needed all these years. Thank you so much for doing the work at the school board. And now, hey, it's never too soon to go back into that school board and say, guess what? We were right. And read them a couple of good quotes from the case.
I think that's important because I also think maybe some people think this discussion is over, meaning that okay, Trump got elected, and they did not go through with Biden's Title IX changes, and everything's fixed now. And the Supreme Court might have ruled, and they're getting rid of the Department of Education and all of that. But this is not over at all. I think people need to understand this is a decades-long agenda that
Absolutely.
is about other things, really.
Absolutely. And I think you're right on the point there, because we had that recent landmark ruling for a detransitioner, Fox Varian, and where she's suing the medical professionals who carved her up, basically, and who did, basically butchery on her body when she was in that transgender phase. And she won, that $2 million verdict, right? That seemed to shock the nation. And it shocked clinics into shutting down their gender clinics. It shocked people coming out of the woodwork saying, well, I don't believe that anymore. And I feel like everyone thought, oh, wow, once that verdict came down, oh, it's over. Well, it's not. What we see in Trump's State of the Union, what we see happening, in fact, today in D.C. is National Detransitioners Awareness Day. There's a huge rally going on as we speak. What we're seeing is finally all of the activism pushing through to the mainstream. We're finally getting coverage of this fight.
Well, and the lawsuits are going to be a difference, because then there's money.
That's right.
Right? And $2 million is not enough for her. But it is interesting how right after that, all of a sudden, gender transitioning for minors is not something the plastic surgeons support anymore.
They're walking it back suddenly.
Which the whole world, by the way, has a couple of years ago now. So we're behind.
That's right.
On this, which is an odd thing. If you just study what's happening in the world, the U.S. is 2 years behind where the rest of the world is on this, and the rest of the world has left.
Even Sweden, where transgender rights were absolutely championed there first and early, everybody has backed off of the surgeries for children and the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones. Right. They realize they are not only not good, they are bad.
Well, and that's, I think, something that also needs to be known. That's another reason why parents need to know. This is not, giving the Flintstone vitamins to your kid if they're taking, puberty blockers. It is, and the whole thing, it's reversible, was never true scientifically or medically.
Right, and you will still hear people say that, this is a pause on puberty. No, it's not a pause. And in fact, let's say you pause the puberty of a young boy, and he goes through this fantasy land of thinking he can be a girl for several years. Well, he's going to arrive at his 18-year-old body having missed the time that your body goes through puberty and you're now a fully functioning adult. That time has passed. You never get that back, even if he changes his mind, which most kids do.
They do, and then they have bone density problems and other things that are being shown here. Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. Sam in Bellflower, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show with Jennifer Kennedy.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Scott. I love the show.
Thank you.
Hey, will this new ruling have any effect on that new law passed, AB 495?
Okay, let's see. So AB 495 it should, although let me think about how we need to amend AB 495. And that was I believe the affidavit, the kidnapping by affidavit bill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't, what, actually, it's in a different lane, frankly. The great thing about all of these laws is that the parent awareness is off the charts. The grassroots opposition is off the charts. And yes, it really needs to be done. That one is a separate issue. It's really about strangers taking control of your child just with a piece of paper, which is bad. But this ruling is a different lane.
Right. But it's all part of the same network of agenda that... and what I like to say, Sam, I appreciate your call on that, in something I think for all of us when we think about this, these kids who are involved in all of this, the ones who mostly eventually change their mind, or they decide they're gay, they're not transgender or any of that, but they've made all these decisions, all of that. These kids and the detransitioners are the first proof of it. They get abandoned by every left-winger who's been pushing them. They get abandoned by the politics, they get abandoned by the doctors, by the teachers' unions, by everybody who has pushed them in that direction as soon as they say, you know what, I no longer think the way I used to think. And I think that's what's coming. Just something for us to think about is there is massive abuse that is happening, and the victims, even if they're hostile towards you about it now, later, they're going to be the victims and there's going to be nobody for them.
That's right. And in fact, that's how you know a cult is when the people escape the cult turns on them. And that's what we see every time.
It happens every time. All right, got to take a break. I want to take your calls here, Ethel and Lori and others when we come back. The phone number is 888-528-2557. This is the Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. Go to PastorScottShow.com to connect with us online. Jennifer, how do people find you on the Facebook?
They can find me on Facebook at Jennifer Lynn Kennedy and on Twitter at Jen Revere.
At Jen Revere. We'll be back as the Thursday edition of the Pastor Scott Show continues. Stay tuned. Pastor Scott Show, we're live. It's Thursday on the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557 is the number, 888-528-2557. Go to 31.
In the three schools, this is the most welcoming. Okay. Especially of individuals of an alternative lifestyle. Got it. We've had a few transgender students come through here. Again, we can't offer gender-affirming care. We can give some therapy, but due to the new federal mandates, we can't call it gender-affirming therapy. Okay. We call it identity therapy. Basically, it hasn't changed. Okay. It's just the way we have to name it in order for billing to take place.
Right, so if you call it one thing, then you can be reimbursed or something like that?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That is part of a video from an undercover investigation that happened in Albuquerque, actually, at the Owens Administrative and Healthcare Support Services, which is a school-based, privately owned healthcare center in Albuquerque, where basically what they're doing is just changing the terms to get around federal regulations about not doing the transgender cares and hiding things from parents. And that is very likely happening here and everywhere else, just changing the terms. With me is Jennifer Kennedy. She is an attorney who is going to be right spot on when it comes to terms and why words matter. That's one of the reasons we need lawyers. So she's a freedom attorney. We're talking about this, and I'll get your calls here in just a minute. 888-528-2557. Lori and Ethel will get right to you. In fact, let's go to Lori's call because I think it's going to be relevant to where we're headed right here. Lori in Santa Barbara, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
I wanted to share with you my experience. I had agreed to send my daughter to a alternative type school so she could catch up on some units when she was in high school. And this was during the COVID time, so I could hear her teachers talking to her. And it was really alarming because they were just so much more liberal, talking about politics even. This was during COVID, so it was part-time on-site, part-time, and I could hear her on a computer. So instead of transferring her back to graduate from her original school, which was already limiting graduation activities, they talked her into graduating from there, gave her a diploma without my permission. I had to go over, I talked to the principal, I had to go over to the superintendent and demand that they cancel her high school diploma and send her back to the school because she's crying that she didn't want to do that. She wanted to participate in graduation activities. So I was told I was the first person in the whole history of the county to have ever done that. And I had already done that previously on behalf of my son, where the principal wasn't there that day, so I just went straight to the superintendent. And when you do that, you will see results within 24 hours. They're going to get back to you, okay? As opposed to if you're trying to deal with a teacher or a principal, because I went through that also in the past, and I was like amazed at their ignorance. Because I work in mental and behavioral health. I advocate for people in the school system or the legal system or the medical system anyways. So I just wanted to tell your listeners, you always advocate for your kid. You question authority. We're the people that, didn't pay our taxes and, raised up arms against our leaders. So you remember that. You hear from God and you advocate for your children.
Thank you, Lori, for sharing all of that.
Fantastic advice, I would say.
That's probably the best thing is you go to the supervisor.
That's right. Go to the top.
Go
right?
to the top.
That's just another example of the type of overreach we see again and again by school officials who think they're entitled to do whatever they want, who think they're entitled to make decisions about the children that are put in their care for the day, but not forever. That type of thing is constantly a horrific surprise to people when they find what has happened to my child without my notice. Because, of course, on the one hand, nurse can't give your child a Tylenol without your permission, but they're going to turn around and make her graduate from another school or transition her into a boy without your knowledge. None of it makes sense.
Right. And probably, some people, this is what they believe is right. That's how they've been conditioned, right, from teachers' unions and what's going through the NEA teachers' union thing a while ago that calls you a villain, that the parent, they use the word villain, which I thought sounded like it's a Disney cartoon or something, that the villain is the parent who doesn't think they should transition their kid. That's what teachers are being told, and it probably takes hold, with people, right? It's like, yeah, these parents are villains.
That is why we've seen what happened in California, because the school districts went along with this. Why would a rational school district actually conspire with the state to lie to parents and deceive them intentionally? Why? What adults would do that? And that's what they've been doing. Yeah. So in my guest is Jennifer Kennedy on the Pastor Scott Show. The Supreme Court made a decision in this case that basically says parental rights are going to be eventually restored wherever, like in California, they've been taken away. You want to make a point. We're talking about the specifics of that case. What happened there? Yeah, a lot of people don't know. Maybe they don't have kids in the district. They don't know what's happening. And this sounds like, well, why can't kids just be kids? But here's what happens when you have a trans-identifying child on campus and the parents don't know. In this case, one of the families that is one of the anonymous plaintiffs in Mirabelli, their child, a daughter, was trans-identifying on campus. They did not know. The school didn't tell them. The school was affirming her every day, all day long, as a boy, as a male identity. And she became so distressed in this world that she was in that she attempted suicide. And the doctor treating the child, that's the first notice the parents had that their child was in this distress, was that she had already attempted suicide. And that is the example we were talking about earlier. How can parents not know that their child is in distress or is exhibiting this red flag behavior? If that's what, thank God, it was only attempted. And that's the inconsistency with it, because anything else, the parents hopefully would be notified. I guess I hope so. I mean, are they going to hide my kid's drug use? If he's caught smoking pot in the bathroom, I want to know. Yeah, that's exactly. They can't lie about that. They can't lie. They're supposed to tell you about bullying, drug use, even academic failure, et cetera. They're supposed to tell you everything. For goodness sake, you have to sign a permission slip for them to set foot off campus. So don't get me started on those protests. Unless they're going on a protest. About to say, there's no permission slip, but we're going to send you over an overpass and be in the middle of an intersection with a sign. Yeah, go ahead, kids, walk off campus. We can't do anything. Yeah. That's a joke also. But. Yeah, I know. Well, I probably would have gone just to get out of class and out of my science test or something. And I think a lot of kids did. Which for sure it is. That must be awesome. I'll protest anything. I'll go protest the new Dodger dog if it gets me out of class. Right, right. And they just let them go. They just let them walk off campus, which I wish somebody would sue on that one. I think that's coming because you've already had, in some other parts of the country, kids actually injured. Who got hit by a car. Running into the street, exactly. And different things happen like that. This is the Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. My guest is Jennifer Kennedy, and we're talking about parental rights and where this stands today. Let me go to Ethel in Fontana. Ethel, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm just wanting to say something for the listeners. Everything is going on with our children today. But we are responsible from the day that they are born, and we are accountable up until now with the gender change. But what I want to tell the parents or the counselors, let me back up. My family has about 4, but they've all come back to who they were really supposed to be. Okay? So you can dress your body up. You can change, you can have surgery, but you can't change your soul. When time comes for you to go home with the Lord, He takes the soul, not what you've dressed your body up with. So if parents or therapists would talk about those things. And I know some people say you can't talk religion. But when the end comes, every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess.
Well, at the end of the
soul.
yeah,
Talk about the soul.
Ethel, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. You know, it's a spiritual issue at the end of the day, right? Because the other agendas it's the cultural Marxism, it's the destruction of the family. It's all part of that agenda that is written down. There are books with binders that say, binding, and you can go find, that are discussing, no, we want to go after...
How to do it.
Yeah, we're going after the children, not because we care about the kids, but because we want to disrupt the family. That's what Engels and Marx wrote about if you wanted to have a cultural revolution.
That's what Mao did.
That's what Mao did
That's
in
what
that
they did in
revolution.
Iran.
And then he murdered you if you didn't want to agree.
That's right.
Iran, and,
with the revolution, certainly.
Yeah.
In 79.
And that's, when we're looking at what's happening in Iran right now, one of the things people should remember is that a lot of people were for that and for that revolution and brought those mullahs in, and they just lied about their agenda. Their agenda was democracy and to defeat inflation and to build the culture as the direction it was going. And it was a fairly modern culture. And 10 minutes after they took power, they started killing those same revolutionaries.
That's right.
That's what always happens.
That's right.
When you're the revolutionary, as soon as the revolution happens, the new leaders kill the revolutionaries.
Pick off all those people that were willing to do something.
Because they don't want, they don't want you to do that to them. That's how that works. 888-528-2557. Can you stay another segment? We're almost running into a break here.
Absolutely.
Are you able to do that?
Yeah.
We're talking about parents' rights and where that stands today, and just having a conversation with you about this, because I think one of the things, like we talked about, how I think these kids are in jeopardy because they're going to be abandoned as soon as this is not the politically correct direction of things. In the meantime, you've got lots of kids getting hurt. You've got girls who aren't getting the trophies they should get in the high schools, and you've got the weird bathroom issue, which is just stunning to me that that's a thing, that anybody puts up with that anywhere. And then the deeper political issues that are there. My guest is Jennifer Kennedy. How do people find you online, Jennifer?
Online, you can find me on Twitter at Jen Revere, and on Facebook at Jennifer Lynn Kennedy.
Twitter X.
Twix.
I don't think people call it X.
You're right.
As much as Elon wants that.
It's not as catchy to say that out loud.
I
Sometimes
like Twitter X, though.
Yeah.
He should just, give in to that. All right. Well, now that you've heard that, probably Elon. This is the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online. PastorScottShow.com. Phone number is 888-528-2557. We'll be back as the Thursday edition continues live. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. Pastor Scott Show. Go to PastorScottShow.com to connect with us online, PastorScottShow.com. We'll be right back with your calls and Jennifer Kennedy in a moment. I want to remind you that our ministry of the month is Dignity Freedom Network. You can go to KKLA.com and you can click on the link that's at the top of the page. And you can help out believers and their families who are suffering from persecution in South Asia. They're facing violent persecution because of their faith. And for $40, you can provide a month of food, emergency relief, and compassionate care, including some legal care to families and who are being very seriously persecuted there. Go to kkla.com and click on the link there, and you can provide a month of food, emergency relief, and compassionate care through our partners at Dignity Freedom Network. kkla.com. Just click the link at the top of the page. If you're listening on another station, your ministry of the month is right there on your local station website. You can find it at pastorscottshow.com, pastorscottshow.com. All right, Jennifer Kennedy is my guest. Phone number is 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Eric in Corona, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, Pastor Scott, how you doing?
I'm good, Eric. Go ahead.
Hey, good. Okay, so I'm not as confused as I was, which is why I called, but I still have a question and a statement, if you don't mind.
Okay, real quick.
So my question is it Mrs. Kennedy's position or anybody's position is that you guys aren't necessarily pro or anti-gender affirming care as much as you are parental rights. So would you be in agreement if a parent, a mother and a father, or even an entire community, mother, father, grandfather, children, doctor, so forth, would all agree that a child under the age of 18 receive gender affirming care with parental consent? Would that be okay with you?
All right, that's an interesting question. So there's
It is an interesting question. I hear you on that. My personal answer is no, 100% no. And here's why. A little child.
I'm sorry, no on what?
No. Okay, you asked if everybody was consenting, everybody was good with it, would I be in favor of gender affirming care provided to a minor child? You know what? I want to jump, Eric, to your first point. You're exactly right. This issue is about parents' rights. Parents' rights overall. So, yes, we're all about parents' rights. Certainly, no one is anti-gay. For example, you hear that a lot, thrown around a lot. That is not what's going on here. That is not what the transgender agenda is about. So, your next question was, what if everyone consents? What if, like you said, a community, the family, the child, what if they all consent to this supposed gender-affirming care? But it's my position, my personal position, that it is neither affirming nor care, because it is altering a child's natural state of being, stopping puberty, and also butchering a child, going through those horrible surgeries because of a lie. The notion that changing your body, you can change your sex.
And the medical consensus, even for people who are for that, are changing their mind now on that.
I only have a second. So your position is less parental rights and more ideology then.
There, you're talking. You have two tracks. You've got two tracks going on. When you're talking about minor children in the school setting, which is what Mirabelli was about, and what we're talking about today. Yes, it's all about parental rights to decide what happens. That they get to know what a school is doing to their child when the kid's on campus. That's a right to know issue right there.
I think his second part is he's saying, okay, so the parents are fully informed.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents would like to transition their kid, and they've got everybody on board in their circle with that.
And here's why I say no, 100% no, because that child cannot give his or her own informed consent to that procedure. And, okay, think about it this way. Can a parent give the consent, say, to the liquor store to have their child buy and consume alcohol on the premises? No, they cannot. Can they give their consent?
Because it's against the law. I mean, that is completely different. I mean,
we're talking.
But it's against the law
about
for a reason.
We're talking because laws are there to protect children, right? That's why you can't consent for a child to do that illegal thing. I think gender affirming, quote unquote, gender affirming care should not be provided to minor children because they, the recipient of the drug, of the hormone, of the surgery, they're the ones who experience the loss of the bodily function they haven't even gotten to experience yet. They cannot possibly consent to giving that up. So how can a parent?
Disagreeing with you.
Okay.
But your position seems to be, if my question is stated the right way, your reply to position still seems to be ideology.
Well, is it ideology to say that a child shouldn't get their driver's license until 16, or not be able to get a tattoo, or not be able to get a medical procedure? No, I'm asking. All of it's ideology if you want to put it in that frame. And the ideology is kids can't give consent. I don't think that's ideology, though. I think that's science.
Oh, and you know what I think, Eric? Let me ask you this. Is this what you're saying? Because you're saying I'm like pro-parents' rights over in the school agenda, but then you're saying, I think, I'm not pro-parents' rights when it comes to parents who want to consent to the procedures and the drugs, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, in a specific sense, but in a general sense, overall parental rights, it seems that you are pro-parents' rights as long as you agree with the position that you stand for, but not as much when it's something that you are against.
Look at who's the.
Here's the other point, because I only have a couple seconds. Because it would appear to me, and I told Pascal this, I come from a family of teachers. I'm married into a family of teachers. So, and I was on the school grounds for 24 years coaching. So, one, nobody wants to raise your child. I had 100 kids every year. Didn't have any interest in raising children or being in their lives or anything like that. So I don't buy into this notion that this is widespread, although it might be, it might happen. I just refuse to believe, based on my own experience being on high school campuses, I don't believe it happens. But here's the thing. If a child is going through a sexual identity or sexual crisis and that things, it's on the parent to understand what's going on with their child. The fact that a school teacher, a counselor, a principal, a vice principal is somehow responsible for the actions or the inactions that's happening at home, because not only was I coach, I was a father of 3.
I don't want to run out of time, Eric, but
you get what I'm saying, though.
Eric, let me interrupt you for 1 second. Okay, you brought up an interesting term that we're not talking about in the transgender agenda. Has nothing to do with sexual orientation or sexuality. The trans activists tell us always, you can be trans and you can be any sexuality. It has nothing to do with gay kids. And in fact, the trans agenda is regressive and it's homophobic, because the trans agenda tells gay kids, if you are same-sex attracted, then you're probably born in the wrong body and you're probably the other sex.
I think what Eric's getting at, though, is...
Thank you so much. And listen, I can ask you guys 1,000 questions. I love you, Pastor Scott.
Thank you, Eric. I got to go. Thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557. It does get to the other part of it, though. So... Some parents are all for it. There's a TV show where some mom transitioned her son into a girl, and it's all her. There's a lot of that going on. When we're talking about the law, when we're talking about protecting kids, why don't we let them drink? Why don't we let them take drugs? Why can't you smoke? Why can't you get pornography legally?
Exactly.
I mean, you can get it, but...
And I'll tell you why. California legislator Nancy Skinner will tell you why. Because she wrote a bill a couple of sessions back, and the bill was to not expel kids who are willfully defiant. It was a new bill saying don't expel them. You know why? Because she said kids are impetuous, they are impulsive, they don't know the consequences of their actions, and they are capable of remarkable change. You're right, Nancy. All of those things apply to these life-altering decisions that kids are being groomed into making with the transgender notion that is put in front of them.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the big things is that this isn't something you just do and then you go, oh, that was a silly kid. When I was in high school, there was this goth movement, and everyone dressed in black, and they had the
the black nail polish,
dog collars they're wearing, and they're terrorizing the mall, right? But you know what? 10 minutes later, they're not doing any of that, and it's embarrassing, or they laugh, but it's gone. It's not a medical procedure. The worst they might have done is got some tattoo or something.
Right.
That they
no regrets.
Right, something like that. But that's the thing, is we have to decide as a society, how do we actually protect our kids from themselves or from very bad ideas that are trendy?
And one of the ways we do it is we tell them they are perfect as they are, no drugs or scalpels. And as Billboard Chris puts it, there are 2 sexes only, and there are infinite personalities.
See the guy who wears the billboard on the sandwich board?
He
gets those. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you know what? This is, there's a lot more to say, but we're almost out of time. This is the era that we live in, an era where people are, sort of rejecting what is common sense. And hopefully we're ending that, but I don't know.
It feels like in this arena we finally are. I feel like actually we are peaking on this issue and waking people up finally.
The lawsuits are going to help, because how do you stand in front of a jury and say, yeah, she was 13 when she had her breasts removed and she was convinced by her doctor and her school board, and who's going to accept that?
Right.
And, nobody.
Right. The Fox Varian case was
right.
out of the chute. No one was there. Nobody was in the audience. Nobody attended. And that has had ripple effect immediately.
New York lefty jury, too.
Yep.
Hey, Jennifer, how do people find you online?
Online, you can find me on Facebook at Jennifer Lynn Kennedy, and on Twitter X, at Jen Revere.
All right, Jennifer, it's always great to have you. Thanks for being on the show and taking calls, and thanks everybody for joining us on the Pastor Scott Show with all of this. And we'll have you back again soon. You've been busy.
I have a lot to talk about.
A lot of great cases. We've got to put a couple of things on hold, because that happens. But I'm very interested in some of the cases that you're working on and where that's going. Because
making a lot of progress.
Maybe it's turning some other pages too.
Yes, it is.